2,000 years ago, a king tried to kill God. His name was Herod the Great. He built temples that blazed white under the sun, cities that clawed at the sky. But beneath every stone he laid, another body was buried. He crowned himself in fear, murdered his own blood, and ordered the massacre of Bethlehem's sons to protect his throne. They called him a visionary. They called him a monster. He called himself King of the Jews, a title he would kill to keep. Yet, for all he built in stone, nothing could save him from the ruins within. This is the story of Herod the Great, the king who built for God and bled for power. If you've made it this far, you're one of the few who doesn't look away when history gets dark. Hit like. It fuels the algorithm and the madness. Subscribe so the next descent finds you first. Before the blood, before the madness, there was a boy born in the red sands east of the Dead Sea, not of David's line, not of Israel's blood, an outsider. Yet from that desert rose a man who would rule Jerusalem with Roman steel and divine ambition. His name was Herod, and this is where his rise begins. Herod wasn't born into prophecy. He was born outside of it. The son of an Arab diplomat and a mother from the red city of Petra. To the Jews of Jerusalem, he was no heir of David, just another pretender with Roman blood on his hands. From his first breath, he was chasing a crown that Scripture said could never be his, and in that impossibility, something dangerous began to grow. Not faith, not peace, but hunger. Herod learned early that fear was more reliable than love. At 26, he crushed a rebellion in Galilee, executing anyone who defied Roman rule. The Senate in Rome called him efficient. Jerusalem called him a butcher. But to Herod, those were just different words for necessary. He saw mercy as weakness, and weakness as an open grave. To be king, he needed royal blood, so he took it. Mariamne, a princess of the Hasmonean line, was barely 16 when Herod made her his queen. Her beauty was legend, her bloodline pure enough to wash away his foreign stain. But love was never the point. She was his ticket to legitimacy, and his first obsession. Herod called it destiny. She called it a cage. When civil war erupted in the east, Herod saw his chance. He crossed the Mediterranean through winter storms to kneel before Rome's new gods, Antony and Octavian. In that marble hall, a foreign soldier from a desert tribe sold his soul for a kingdom. The Senate didn't hesitate. They crowned him King of the Jews, a title his own people would never speak without spitting. From that moment, Herod stopped asking for approval. He would build his legitimacy in stone and cement it with blood. He returned to Judea not as a son of David, but as Rome's iron shadow. The streets that once mocked him now trembled beneath his soldiers' boots. Herod had won his crown, but he would spend the rest of his life trying to keep it. Because power is a disease, and in Herod, the symptoms had just begun. To prove himself worthy of a crown no one wanted him to wear, Herod turned to what only gods could do: creation. He rebuilt Jerusalem's temple from its ancient ruins, a mountain of marble and gold so vast that travelers said it shone like snow against the sky. Even his enemies called it beautiful. The rabbis said, "Whoever has not seen Herod's temple has never seen glory." But glory was never Herod's goal. He wasn't building to honor God, he was building to replace him. Herod ruled from walls thicker than trust: Masada, Herodium, Caesarea. fortresses carved from the desert like the bones of the earth itself. He said they were monuments to his reign, but they were prisons built for a man who no longer felt safe in his own palace. Each fortress had escape tunnels, secret chambers, hidden cisterns of water. Every stone was a symptom of the same disease. The more he built, the more he feared losing it. Herod's obsession with Mariamne curdled into paranoia. He adored her beauty and feared her bloodline. He whispered to guards, planted spies in his own halls, and left orders that if he ever failed to return from war, she was to be executed. Love had turned into surveillance. The man who built temples for God was now building traps for ghosts. When Mariamne's brother became high priest and the people cheered his name, Herod's jealousy drowned him in his own pool. That night, Jerusalem learned the truth. Herod didn't fear betrayal. He expected it. The murders didn't stop. He killed rivals, generals, priests, even his own sons. He told Rome they were plotting against him. He told himself they were. Each execution brought him peace for a day and nightmares for a lifetime. The palace that once rang with music became a tomb of whispers. Every glance, every silence, every shadow, an accusation. In his madness, Herod mistook control for peace. He thought that if he could order every breath, every prayer, every stone, he could silence the chaos inside him. But control is just fear wearing a crown. And soon even Rome, the empire that made him, began to question the man they had created. Herod had conquered his enemies, silenced his critics, and buried his family. Only one threat remained, a child. A prophecy whispered in Bethlehem of a newborn king who would rise where Herod's line would end. And this is where fear becomes legacy. Rumors began to spread, whispers of a child born under a star. A child they called the King of the Jews, the same title Rome had given Herod, and one he had slaughtered to protect. To others, it was a miracle. To Herod, it was war. He summoned priests, scholars, and spies, demanded to know where prophecy said this child would be born. When they said Bethlehem, his eyes went still. He sent his soldiers to the small town of Bethlehem with one command: kill every boy under 2. Streets that once sang with laughter ran red with blood. Mothers screamed the names of sons who would never grow old. And still, the king's order echoed, "No heir but mine." Yet even in his cruelty, he failed, because the one child he feared most was already gone. Not long after, the king's body began to rot before he was dead. His flesh blackened, his breath reeked of infection. He clawed at his skin, screaming that worms were devouring him alive, a punishment the priests called divine justice. Herod ordered executions from his deathbed. He demanded that when he died, the elders of Jerusalem be slaughtered, so that the city would weep for him whether it wanted to or not. But they didn't. When Herod finally died, Jerusalem celebrated. They buried him in Herodium, a fortress he built to prove his immortality, a mountain sculpted by his own hands, and a tomb now shattered by time. For centuries, no one could find his grave. It was as if history itself refused to remember him, the king who tried to outbuild God, erased by the very earth he shaped. Herod's name survives, carved into ruins, whispered in scripture. A man who built the holiest temple, yet filled it with fear. He conquered a kingdom, but lost his soul to the walls he built around it. Perhaps that's the real story of Herod the Great, not a monster, but a man who mistook control for divinity. And in trying to kill God, became the proof that no man ever could. History remembers him as a villain, but every empire still crowns men who build in his image. So ask yourself, how many Herods still rule today?